Wonderful. Our next question is a question via Twitter, so we're going to check that out. It has to do with property taxes. Why is the property tax assessment based on market value when it has nothing to do with the actual market?
Well, that's not actually true.
Okay.
In fact, here in Alberta, we have something called market value assessment annually.
Okay.
A lot of places do this every 3 or 5 years. And so in this case, the assessors do the work to determine the market value on July 1st of the previous year.
Okay.
So it's always a little bit lagged because you get your assessment in January, but it's about the previous July. And it's based on the sales in your neighborhood.
Okay.
So if you happen to live in a very tiny neighborhood, I happen to know there's one very high-end neighborhood in Calgary where the houses don't sell very often. And this year they had a distressed sale. So one house in the neighborhood sold, and everybody's values went down 20 or 30%. That was pretty extreme. That never ever happens except in these very specific cases. Sometimes they make mistakes, and that's why we have an appeals period. So if you think your assessment when you get it in January is incorrect, and the appeals period is still open, by the way, just barely. So just phone the assessment department.
Okay.
And they will either walk you through it, and if you're satisfied with the explanation, because they'll tell you what the market value in the neighborhood is and so on. If you're satisfied with it, great. If you're not satisfied, there's an arm's length appeal process where you can say, nah, the city made a mistake. And if we did, we'll fix it. Now, this leads to a more important question. And that is that the property tax based on market value assessment is an incredibly unfair way to tax. It taxes people on their wealth, not their income. So if you're a senior and you're living in a neighborhood that's now a really desirable neighborhood and you've always lived there, suddenly you have to pay these really high property taxes. It's particularly unfair for small businesses. And so the problem that we had this year was that many small businesses across the city are struggling. And in particular, the businesses downtown are struggling very much. So because our vacancy rate downtown went from 0% essentially to 30% in 2 years, the market value assessment of the downtown buildings went through the floor. So the people downtown got giant tax cuts. And we froze the tax rate on average for everyone in the city when we passed the budget. So the people downtown got giant tax cuts, but because it's frozen on average, the people outside of downtown got giant tax increases, which was really unfair. Because these businesses are also not doing well, and it's not based on how well your business is doing, it's based on how much money your landlord has in that building. So we were able to put a Band-Aid on it this year, and as I said, it's a Band-Aid, but when you're bleeding, a Band-Aid is helpful. By setting aside $45 million to cap all the businesses in the city will not see an increase of more than 5%. Many will see huge declines. And those who do see increases will see increases of a maximum of 5%.
And that's the same for small and large businesses?
We had to do it for all businesses, and I was convinced that for these very large businesses, a lot of them are landlords, and their tenants are very small businesses. So as long as they pass that through, and in most leases you have to, we'll be okay. It's not a good long-term solution. And in the long term, we got to work with the provincial government to find a better, more effective, fair way of taxing people. Right now, I think we do a pretty good job in managing this. Our property taxes remain among the lowest in the country, but it's still not an ideal taxation form.